Good evening, and welcome. I'm glad you've made it here, to your quiet shelter against the dark. Sometimes, the best way to silence the real worries of the day is to listen to a different kind of fear, a safe fear, told in a soft voice. Tonight, we have 3 allegedly true, unsettling stories for you, designed to help you relax and drift away, all told to the soothing sound of steady rain. And as always, there will be no mid-roll ads to break the atmosphere. Before you get too comfortable, if you appreciate what we do here, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe. I'm always curious to know where our stories are pushing back the darkness. Let me know in the comments what storm you're listening to tonight, real or imagined. And now, check your doors, settle in deep, and let the sound of the rain be your shield against the silence. Let's listen to what the darkness has to say. Our first story tonight comes from a place of profound isolation, a lonely rock surrounded by an endless, hungry sea. This is the logbook of The Watcher at St. Jude's Rock. October 19th, 1903. My 7th week here at the St. Jude's Rock Lighthouse. The supply ship is not due for another month. The solitude is complete. There is only the endless gray of the sea, the constant damp chill that seeps into the stone, and the rhythmic, mournful cry of the foghorn. It is a lonely sound, a great groaning beast warning ships away from these jagged rocks. I call out to it sometimes during the long nights, just to hear another voice. The foghorn is the only thing that answers, usually. October 22nd. The fog has been unusually thick these past few days, a great white wall that swallows both sight and sound. I cannot see the waves, but I can hear them crashing at the base of the rock. A constant, angry churning. The lamp is in perfect working order. I have polished the lens until it shines like a captured star. It cuts a bright, unwavering beam into the oppressive whiteness. But the fog pushes back. It feels heavy, almost solid. October 25th. Something is wrong. Tonight, during my watch in the lantern room, I saw something in the fog. It was brief, just a flicker at the edge of the beam's reach. It was not a ship. It was not a bird. It was a shape, tall and thin. It seemed to stand upon the water, just where the light met the dark. I cleaned my glasses, thinking it a trick of the light, a phantom of the mist. When I looked again, it was gone. My heart is beating a little faster than it should be. The sea plays tricks on a lonely mind. That is all. October 25th. It was there again tonight. In the same spot. It did not move. It just stood. A dark line in the swirling gray. I kept the light trained on it for a full 10 minutes. It did not waver. This is not a trick of the light. There is something out there. The thought is unsettling. The isolation of this place is no longer a comfort. It feels like a cage. And I am not alone in it.
October 27th. It was closer last night. Noticeably closer. I used the Service spyglass. The lens is powerful, but the fog is a stubborn veil. I could not make out a face or clothes or any features at all. It is simply a silhouette. A long, sharp darkness against the white. But the proportions, they are wrong. The limbs are too long, the neck too thin, and the sea around it is unnaturally calm. While the waves crash against my rock, the water around the shape is as still and flat as a pane of glass. It defies reason. October 28th. Something terrible happened tonight. At midnight, I sounded the foghorn. Its deep, familiar groan echoed out into the mist. And then, from the fog, another sound came back. It was not an echo. It was a reply. Thin, high-pitched, a sound like metal scraping against glass, but with a strange musical quality. It was a horrible, perfect mimicry of the foghorn's melody. I froze. My blood ran cold. I did not sound the horn again for the rest of my watch. I sat in silence, listening. But there was nothing, only the waves. October 30th. The feeling of being watched is constant now. Even in the lower levels, with 2 floors of solid stone between me and the lantern room, I feel its presence. I have barricaded the lower entrance door with a spare iron beam. A foolish gesture. I am on a rock, leagues from any shore. What good is a lock? The paranoia is taking root. I cannot sleep. I spend my off hours searching through the old logbooks left by previous keepers, looking for, I don't know what, an explanation, a similar madness. November 1st. I found something. In a dusty logbook from 1853, a keeper named Thomas Callahan. Most of his entries are routine. Weather, passing ships, maintenance. But his last week is different. His handwriting becomes frantic, slanted. He writes of a thin man in the fog, of a song from the water that mimics the horn. His last entry, on the day the supply ship found the lighthouse empty, has only 6 words. The light is not enough. It watches. November 3rd. I am not mad. Knowing this is not a comfort. It is perhaps worse. I feel a kinship with Thomas Callahan, the man who vanished 50 years ago. I read his last frantic entries over and over, as if they are a map, as if they hold a secret to survival. The shape is still there each night, unmoving, patient. But its stillness no longer feels passive. It feels like the coiled stillness of a predator. November 5th. It moved. For the first time since I saw it, it moved. It did not swim. It did not walk. It drifted. A slow, silent glide across the flat, black water, leaving no ripple, no wake. It moved from the edge of the beam's reach until it was at the very base of St. Jude's Rock. It is directly below me now. I can no longer see it from the lantern room. I know this is worse, much worse. November 6th. I heard a new sound last night. It was not the waves. It was not the wind. It came from the lower level,
from the entrance door. A faint, rhythmic tapping. Tap, tap, tap. The sea crashes and roars. This was deliberate, timed, patient. It went on for an hour. I did not move from my chair in the galley. I just listened. The thick iron door between me and the sea has never felt so thin. November 7th. The tapping was louder tonight, more insistent, and it was accompanied by something else. The song, that high-pitched, scraping mimicry I heard from the fog. But now it was outside the door, muffled by the stone. It was trying to form a word, my name, James. It sounded like nails on slate. I have stopped maintaining the lamp. Let the ships fend for themselves. The light is not a warning, it is a beacon, and it has drawn something terrible from the deep. I think it wants me to let it in. I think Thomas Callahan let it in.
November 8th. I did not sleep. I do not think I will ever sleep again. The tapping and the singing of my name, it was constant through the night, but it is no longer coming from outside the door. It is inside. I can hear it faintly, echoing up the spiral staircase from the storeroom at the base. A wet, dragging sound. The lower door is still barricaded. How did it get in? How? Then I remember the sea, the constant dampness, the way the water seeps through the stone itself during a storm. The sea finds a way inside, always. Perhaps it brings things with it. November 9th. November 9th. It is closer now. I can hear the dragging sound on the floor below me. It is slow, patient. It will be at the lantern room door by nightfall. I have locked myself in here with the great lamp that I have let die. In the silence, listening to its slow approach, I have had time to think, and I believe I finally understand. It is not malice. It is not hunger. It is loneliness. It has been out there in the dark for centuries, perhaps longer, and the only other thing in its world has been this light, this warm, constant, singular point of life. It does not want to extinguish the light. It wants to be with it. It wants to be near it. And I am the keeper of the light. November 9th, nightfall. The dragging sound has stopped. It is just outside my door. The doorknob is turning slowly. Back and forth, the old metal is groaning. That horrible, high-pitched song, it is whispering through the keyhole. The lock will not hold for long. It's such a lonely sound. Thomas was right. The light is not enough. It needs a keeper, always. It needs a...
We leave the lonely rock to the sea and trade the sound of the waves for a silence that is much, much deeper. The silence of a million sleeping stories and one section that was never meant to be found. Our second tale is called The Section of Unread Books.
My name is Arthur, and for 5 years the library has been my sanctuary. By day it is a bustling place of quiet learning, but at night it is mine. There is a silence in the grand reading hall after midnight that is unlike any other. It is a heavy, ancient silence, full of the weight of a million sleeping stories. I love the smell of old paper and leather binding. I love the pools of warm, yellow light cast by the reading lamps, islands of safety in a vast, dark ocean of shelves. I knew this place. Every corner, every corridor, every book. Or so I thought. The work was simple. A late-night inventory of the East Wing. Just counting, checking against the registrar. But the numbers were wrong. 312 books were missing from the count. Impossible. I am meticulous. I do not make such errors. I walked the aisles again, my footsteps the only sound. Aisle 1, aisle 2, aisle 3. And at the very end of the third aisle, where there should have been only a solid stone wall, there was a door. It was a narrow, unassuming door, made of dark, plain wood. It had no handle, no lock, not even a keyhole. It was utterly blank. I had walked this aisle 1,000 times. I had never seen this door before. I am certain of it. My logical mind told me it was a service closet I had simply never noticed. But there was no dust on it, no cobwebs, and a cold draft emanated from its base. Driven by a curiosity that I now deeply regret, I pushed it. It swung open without a sound. It was not a closet. It was another aisle, one that could not possibly exist. The East Wing ends at the outer wall of the library. This aisle stretched forward into a darkness so complete my lamp could not pierce it. The air that flowed out was different. It did not smell of paper or dust. It smelled of nothing. A sterile, cold emptiness. Hesitantly, I took a step inside. The books on these shelves were wrong. They had no titles on their spines, no markings of any kind. They were all bound in the same plain gray cloth. I pulled one from the shelf. It was surprisingly heavy. I opened it. The pages were blank, every single one. I pulled another, the same, and another, all empty. An entire section of unread, unwritten books. A deep sense of unease settled over me. I decided to leave, to close the door and forget what I saw. But when I turned around, the doorway seemed much, much further away than it was a moment ago.
A cold panic seized me. I started walking back towards the door, towards the warm, familiar light of my library. But the more I walked, the further the light seemed to recede. It was like walking on a treadmill, moving but getting nowhere. I stopped, my breath catching in my throat. This was not a real place. The architecture was a lie. In my fear, I turned and ran deeper into the darkness, away from the shrinking doorway, hoping to break the illusion. The corridor began to curve in a way that made my head spin. It felt wrong, like a staircase with a step that is not there. Exhausted and disoriented, I finally stopped, leaning against a towering shelf to catch my breath. That's when I noticed it. One of the plain gray books was different. It had a single black symbol on its spine, an intricate knot of sharp, angular lines. With a trembling hand, I pulled the book from the shelf. It was cold, colder than the air around it. I opened it. The pages were not blank. They were filled with a script I had never seen. It was not human.
The letters were made of intersecting lines and impossible angles that hurt to look at. As I stared at a page, trying to make sense of it, the symbols seemed to shift, to subtly crawl on the page like disturbed insects. I slammed the book shut, a wave of nausea and primal fear washing over me. This was not knowledge. This was a poison for the mind. And in that perfect, sterile silence, I heard a sound. A soft, dry rustling, like dry leaves skittering across pavement or the turning of 1,000 brittle pages at once. It seemed to come from all directions and from no direction at all. It was the sound of the dust in this place, breathing. Frightened beyond measure, I started moving again, deeper into the impossible library. The narrow aisle suddenly opened into a vast central chamber that defied logic. Shelves rose hundreds of feet into a darkness so complete it seemed to swallow the light from my lamp. This was not just a hidden corridor. This was a cathedral of unwritten books. And in the exact center of the vast, silent room stood a single tall, wooden rolling ladder, its top disappearing into the oppressive darkness high above. The rustling sound was louder here.
I stood in that vast chamber for what felt like an eternity, my small lamp pushing back a pathetic circle of light against an ocean of darkness. The rustling sound was the only thing that moved in that perfect stillness, and it was coming from above. My eyes were drawn back to the ladder. It was the only invitation, the only path forward in a place with no paths. With a fear so cold it felt like resolve, I walked to its base and began to climb. The ascent was dizzying. The rungs of the ladder were cool and smooth under my hands. The shelves of gray, nameless books blurred past me in the lamplight. Below me, the floor vanished into absolute black. Above me, only darkness and the sound. The rustling grew louder, more distinct. It was not the sound of 1,000 pages, but of one. The slow, dry, deliberate turning of a single, massive page, and then another. Finally, my hand touched the top of the ladder. It ended at a small wooden platform, high in the suffocating dark. And there, on the shelf before me, was the source of the sound. It was not a gray book. It was a colossal, ancient ledger, bound in cracked black leather. It was the only book of its kind in this entire place, and it was open. As I watched, a page, thin and dry as a dead leaf, lifted on its own and turned with a soft, rustling sigh. My lamp cast a trembling light onto the open pages. It was not a story. It was a list, a register, written in a neat, precise, but inhuman hand. It was a list of names. Next to each name was a short, final description. I read one at random. Eliza. Felt the walls closing in. Smelled of lavender and fear. Thought of her daughter's smile. I read another. Thomas Callahan. Followed a voice from the sea. Smelled of salt and madness. Thought of the light. My blood turned to ice. It was a register of everyone who had found this place. A final archive of the lost. I turned the brittle pages, my hands shaking
I saw the name of the librarian who worked here before me, the one who was said to have retired so suddenly. And then, near the end of the last page, I saw the final entry. It was my own name, Arthur, and next to it, the description was being written. The ink was appearing on the page as if from nowhere, line by silent line, forming the sharp, angular letters. It was describing the trembling of my hand holding the lamp. It was describing the cold sweat on my brow. It was describing the silent final scream trapped in my throat. It was describing how I stood high in the darkness of a forgotten library, reading the last words of my own unread story.
Now, we escape the impossible walls of the library and find ourselves on a long black ribbon of asphalt under a cold moon. Some forgotten places are made of stone and paper. Others are made of static and the endless lonely miles. Our final story tonight comes to us from the Midnight Radio on Highway 85. The road is a long, straight, black ribbon stretching into infinity. Out here on Highway 85, after midnight, the world shrinks to the bubble of your cab. There's just the drone of the engine, the low rumble of 18 wheels on asphalt, and the pale, cold light of the moon on the empty desert. My name's Ray, and I've been driving this route for 20 years. You get used to the loneliness. You even start to like it. The only thing that can break a man out here is the monotony. That's why I was scanning the radio. Anything to keep my mind occupied. It was the usual, static, faint whispers of a distant talk show, more static. But then, as I passed mile marker 112, I landed on something. It was crystal clear. Music, but old music. A crackly big band tune from the 50s, maybe earlier. Cheerful, simple. I figured it was a novelty station, broadcasting from some small, forgotten town off the highway. I smiled, turned it up a little, and settled in. The song ended, and an announcer's voice came on. It was folksy, warm, and impossibly cheerful. And that was Blue Moon by the Sentinels, a beautiful tune for a beautiful night here in Havenwood Creek. The time is 1:15 a.m., and the sky is clear as a bell. He gave a local weather report predicting mild and pleasant night. Standard stuff. But then his tone, still just as cheerful, shifted ever so slightly. "And now for our nightly town reminders," he chirped. "The Ladies' Auxiliary bake sale is this Saturday, and residents are reminded to please stay indoors after sundown. Don't forget to smile. A smile keeps the watchers away." The cheerful music started right back up. I felt a cold chill run down my spine that had nothing to do with the truck's air conditioning. A smile keeps the watchers away? I've driven this route my entire adult life. I know every town, every gas station, every speed trap for 500 miles. There is no town called Havenwood Creek. I grabbed my map from the passenger seat, flicking on the light. I scanned the area around mile marker 112. Nothing. Just empty, unnamed desert for 50 miles in every direction. I shut off the radio. The silence of the cab felt heavier than before. I drove for 20 minutes in absolute silence. The only sound was the rumble of my own engine. I tried to put the broadcast out of my mind. A prank. A pirate radio station run by some kids with a dark sense of humor. That's all. Then, with a soft click and a burst of static, the radio came back on. By itself. The same cheerful, crackly music filled the cab. I reached over and jabbed the power button. Nothing. I twisted the volume knob. It wouldn't turn. I tried to change the station. The dial was frozen. Stuck. A cold dread, heavy and real, began to settle in my gut. The music faded out. The warm, folksy voice of the announcer returned. And we're back. A special welcome to all our listeners passing through on this fine, fine night. We know the road can get lonely out there on Highway 85. Just know that we see you. He paused, and the sound of crackling static seemed to grow louder for a moment. Looks like we have a Peterbilt 389 joining us tonight. A beautiful rig. Red cab with a silver trailer. I am driving a Peterbilt 389. My cab is red. My trailer is silver. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The cheerful voice continued, oblivious to my terror. Just a little friendly tip for our new traveler. You're coming up on a sharp curve just past mile marker 119. Best to slow it down a little. And whatever you do, friend, don't look too closely at the faces on the roadside signs. They're not smiling tonight. The cheerful music started again. I was barely breathing. Up ahead, I saw it. Mile marker 119. And after it, a sharp curve, just like he said. My headlights caught the first reflective roadside sign. For a split second, I saw it. Not a reflection, a face, distorted, screaming. I jerked my eyes back to the road, my heart hammering against my ribs. I passed another sign and another, forcing myself to stare straight ahead to see only the white lines of the highway. The big band music on the radio faded out, replaced by a new song, a slow, haunting lullaby played on a scratchy record player. The announcer's voice came on one last time, his cheerfulness now sounding strained, almost insane. Safe travels, friend. Just remember, if your engine stalls, don't get out of the cab, and don't stop smiling. The lullaby played on, the only sound in my cab as I drove deeper into the endless, watching dark. I don't know how long I drove with that lullaby playing. An hour, maybe a lifetime. The desert outside was a black, featureless void. The road was the only real thing left. Then, the lullaby faded into static, and the announcer's voice returned. His cheerfulness was completely gone now. His voice was flat, empty, final. You're almost here, friend. The next exit is for you. The exit for Havenwood Creek. I stared into the darkness ahead. That's impossible, I thought. There are no exits on this stretch for another 70 miles. But then I saw it, faintly at first, then growing clearer. A perfectly paved exit ramp branching off from the old cracked asphalt of the highway. At its start was a brand new reflective sign. In clean, friendly letters, it read, Havenwood Creek, population smiling. I gripped the wheel, determined to stay on the highway, to drive past this nightmare. But my hands might as well have been stone. The steering wheel turned smoothly, guided by an unseen force. The truck did not lurch or fight. It glided effortlessly onto the new road. I was no longer driving. I was being delivered. The ramp crested a small hill, and I saw the town below. It looked like a postcard from the 1950s. Neat little houses with perfect lawns, a single main street with a diner and a gas station, their signs glowing in soft neon. But there were no people, not a soul, and every house, every lamppost, every sign was marked with a face, a crudely painted, smiling face, with wide, unblinking eyes and a fixed, manic grin. The truck rolled to a perfect stop in the middle of the silent main street. The engine cut out. The headlights died. The announcer's voice came on one last time. It was not from the radio anymore. It was all around me. It was in my head. "Welcome home, resident. We're so glad you've stopped driving. Now you can finally rest." Just one last rule. Don't stop smiling. I looked at my reflection in the dark windshield, and I saw it. My own mouth pulled back into a wide, tight, painful smile. I tried to relax my jaw, to let my lips fall, but I couldn't. The muscles were locked, frozen in this horrifying grin. I looked out at the empty, watching houses, at the hundreds of painted smiles in the moonlight. The watchers are the residents. They're always smiling. And now, I am too.